We're live, like we are every Wednesday, a little after 5, 5 minutes after 7. I typically take a few extra minutes to get down here. Um, 3-kid life, it's just a lot. So today we're going to talk about, well, in the last several episodes, it continues to be a topic that we hit on, talking about tax havens. And I talked about how it can make a lot of sense to, go to places like the Bahamas, or maybe Costa Rica, or like the whole Cayman Islands thing, maybe even in the US, like Puerto Rico. They're all like tax havens. But I haven't touched on in a while a topic that I talked about 4 years ago. I made a video on it. And it's talking about how great Canada is. Canada is an amazing tax haven if you're not Lux Fire. So if you're looking for a average or below average retirement, Canada is fantastic. And I'm going to tell you guys why you can be completely tax-free in retirement. So first and foremost, the most powerful tax vehicle we have in Canada, okay, arguably the most powerful tax vehicle we have in Canada, is the primary residence capital gains exemption. You can own a home here, and any improvements or whatever you do to it, if you stage it nice, paint it, or just market appreciates over a 2, 3, 4, 10, 20-year period, all of that gain is tax-free. And in many of the major cities here in Canada, that's a huge tax benefit we're going to talk about. But the primary reason Canada is awesome is we have something called the Canadian Eligible Dividend Tax Credit. So 2 spouses can each earn effectively almost $55,000 a year each in dividends, approximately about, I think it's like 52,000 last I checked, because the corporate tax rates are given as a credit. So I'd have to double check the math on it exactly. Someone just said in the comments, let's see. It's not 50,000 dividend anymore, it's 32,000. I have to fact check that. I'm not 100% sure if that's changed, but as of last year, it was about 52,900 or something in dividend income per spouse. Now that's the first benefit. That's already, let's say it's even 33,000, right? That's like almost $70,000 a year, completely tax-free, because the dividends are being paid from, say, Bank of Montreal, or Enbridge, or pick any company that pays dividends in Canada. If they've already paid tax, dividends are after tax, right? So a dividend given to you by a publicly traded company is already taxed. So as soon as you get that dividend, you get a credit for the tax the corp already paid. And if your income's less than the $50,000 or so, depending on your bracket, you end up getting that tax-free. That's pretty sweet. Another thing, if you have a couple kids in Canada, let's talk about the Canada Child Benefit. They're talking about increasing it. It's currently about $600 per child cash deposited in your account tax-free. So if you have 2 kids, that's $1,200 a month tax-free cash for those 2 kids until the kids are, I think it scales back a little bit when they turn 7, and then it scales back when they turn 18. So that's for like an 18-year period. I guess you get a little bonus. There's also the Ontario Child Benefit. There's the Canada Child Benefit. There's another benefit you can get as well. But you have to be a really low-income person, so that one you might not qualify for. Another great thing is a tax-free savings account. Most of us are going to reach retirement after 10, 15, 20 years of working. And if you maxed out your tax-free savings account at $5,000 or $6,000 or $10,000 some years in contribution room every single year, guess what? You're going to have, in most cases, if you invested in, say, the S&P 500, about 9% growth every single year. So after 10, 15, 20 years, you should have $250,000 per person in your tax-free savings accounts. So there's, again, in retirement, that could be $500,000 or $1 million in a tax-free savings account that you could then lend out in private mortgages. The reason I say private mortgages is because interest income is taxed at the top marginal bracket inside both a corp and your personal name. So it's at the top marginal bracket for passive income. That's why I like the TFSA for that reason. You can put second mortgages on flippers properties and collect 12% annualized. A little bit higher risk, a little bit higher tax treatment, but inside of a TFSA, no tax treatment. So use your tax-free savings accounts to bring in $4,000 or $5,000 a month tax-free. Doesn't count against your income at all. So there's $4,000 or $5,000 a month right there, tax-free. Again, the dividend thing, I don't know, maybe it's $33,000, $35,000 a year now. They might have scaled it back. Last year it was $52,000 or so a person. So you're looking at 6 figures right there in retirement income. Most people can retire on 6 figures of passive income. If you have, a portfolio with, let's say your net worth is $1 million, you could have half your net worth in your house, which again would be appreciating and providing cash flow. If you refinance it every few years, you could pull some of that appreciation out while still paying it down if that was your goal, which it shouldn't ever be your goal. You should never want to pay down a debt that's at 2% interest. That just makes no sense. There's so many better opportunities for your capital than paying down your mortgage. There's so many better places you can put that money than saving yourself 2% interest. Instead, try to refinance your house, pull some of that equity out and invest it somewhere else. You can borrow at 2% against your house, invest it, in private mortgages or in, any of the dividend stocks that will yield you, in many cases, a lot of the Canadian dividend stocks are paying 4, 5, 6, 7% yield plus any stock appreciation. The stock tends to go up in value over time, but even if it doesn't, even if it stayed flat forever or went down, you're collecting dividend cash flow that pays your mortgage for you. So borrow that money off your house and put it to work. Any of the growth on your house continues to happen tax-free. That's awesome. The RRSP, the Registered Retirement Savings Plan, is another awesome one that you can use to defer taxes until a long time from now when you're old. Let your estate pay the tax. And the idea behind deferring tax is if you defer tax long enough, the tax is zero. Like if I agree to pay you back $100, but I pay you back in 50 years, I've effectively paid you back nothing. Because over 50 years, the value of the $100 has gone to near zero. So if you can defer paying something for a long period of time, that's the same as not paying it at all, effectively. Like a $100 bill, 50 or 60 years from now is probably worth about $10 in buying power. So you're paying a $100 debt with $10 in the future. That's awesome. That's what you want, right? Canada is actually a really great place. Free healthcare, amazing services. Optometry is even covered in some cases. Ontario is a great province. We have a great infrastructure of things that are, here for us. There are a lot of social support programs that exist for people in need. There's places for food and shelter if you needed it. There's great library systems here, free public parks, free skating. We have at least a free skate every other day here in London, Ontario. You can go to the arenas and they various organizations sponsor it, the government sponsors it. And so you can go skating. There's lots of things you can do for free in Canada, which is awesome. So you could retire relatively leanly on say $3,000-4,000 a month and be bringing in $8,000 or $10,000 a month, almost completely tax-free if you structure it properly. So Canada is often overlooked as a tax haven, but on my original journey to FIRE, I preferred to be in Canada over anywhere else. It just so happened that I got a bit lucky and, I positioned myself well to ride the appreciation wave. I've done really well in stocks, I've done really well in real estate, and because I borrowed, 4 of every $5 that went into real estate, I was borrowing. If the market went up, and it did, it went up like 50%, I made 200%, right? So I'm not in a position where I'm looking to these tax havens because I'm now becoming wealthy, right? It doesn't make sense to stay in Canada because at my tax bracket, like if you're making say $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 a year, your plans to make $500,000, $600,000, $800,000 a year in retirement, or you just want to keep making that and you don't want to retire, Canada's not a great place to be because half of your income will go to tax. There's no way to really avoid that. You can defer it inside of corps using, if it's active income inside of your corp, you get like a 13% tax. But eventually when you take it out of your corp and bring it into your personal name, you'll pay the full tax anyway. So there's, you can defer the tax, but you have to end up paying it in Canada. There are places like the Bahamas or the Cayman Islands where there's zero tax and you pay nothing on anything you make. That's way better in my opinion. But if, again, most of the people watching this, majority of my audience, I'm sure, like probably 95% of people watching, assuming it's proportional to the, I probably skew wealthier, to be honest. Most of the people watching this show are probably slightly better than average for their age. And so you may be actually wealthier, and this may not be very helpful advice, but if you are, if you have less than a couple million net worth and you can put that to work and make, say, $100,000 a year in retirement, you could live in Canada and have free healthcare and a bunch of other benefits that are provided by being a Canadian and are covered by our social system and pay almost no tax for all those great benefits, for all those great things that Canada provides. It's a very safe, great country to live in. I love Canada, but it's not a great place to be if you want to be an entrepreneur making 7 figures a year. It's a terrible place to be. There are very few ways to avoid tax, legally speaking, right? And so that's why I think a tax haven can make a lot of sense for someone as you scale up. But I just wanted to dedicate the first 5-10 minutes of this episode to, I don't want to throw Canada out of the bus because the majority of my audience here probably could structure their early retirement or their FIRE plan, staying in Canada and paying nearly no tax. That's an amazing thing. So I just want to leave that out there, that Canada is a great place. It's going down the shitter politically. I think a lot of the rules they have around these vaccine mandates make no sense. It's great now that we're seeing a lot of well-respected experts in the field, doctors and scientists coming out and saying, hey, when we look at the data, vaccines actually don't do anything when it comes to reducing transmission. Guess what? The people who need to be vaccinated are those at risk, like we've been saying all along, and that vaccinating 10,000 kids under 12 does almost nothing for hospitalizations. It does almost nothing for stopping death count. Like, vaccinate the old people and the people who are at risk. Anyway, I don't want to get into it, but I think these mandates are retarded. Even as someone who is pro-vaccination, which I am, you know, I think that everyone who wants to get it should. I'm pro for it. You know, my parents got it. A lot of people in my family got it, and I had great conversations with them. And I understand for them it makes a lot of sense to get it. I also have friends who are, you know, I have a friend who's like in their early 20s, and it makes no sense for them to get it. And I respect their choice, and they should have the right to do whatever they want because they're not at a higher risk of transmitting the virus to anyone else. They're only at a risk for themselves, and at their age, they aren't at a risk to themselves either. They're not going to die. It's treated almost the same as the flu. They have like a 0.0001% chance of death. They have a greater risk getting in their car and driving to work. They have a greater risk getting on an airplane. They have a greater risk of choking. There's literally a greater number of deaths from the age of 18 to 25, choking deaths per year, than there are from COVID. You have a higher chance of dying choking on your food. So like, keep living your life. If you're 20 years old, get the vaccine, don't get the vaccine, whatever, but live your life. The science or the data that, you know, the left government's pushing out to force this new tracking, it's basically a system for tracking people, unfortunately. They've been trying to push that out since 2009. They started with the idea of the health pass, where they could track wherever you used any of your health services, they could collect that data and use that. Then they wanted to turn your driver's license into a digital passport where they could track wherever you went. They liked the idea of being able to track where you eat and track where you go and everything. It's just great. It's like the Chinese government. They love to track everything. I, for one, I'm all about liberty and freedom. So I think tracking is horrible. I think people should have the freedom to do what they want and the government should fuck off. I truly believe they have no business tracking where we're eating for lunch and then using that data against us in some way or to their own political agenda or benefit. So I'm just not a fan of the digital tracking. I get that it might have some good benefits, but yeah, I'm gonna get off this soapbox now because whatever. I'll be leaving Canada, probably come back 5 months a year to visit family and things like that, but I'll be spending my majority of my time, my 7 months a year, in some warm tax haven in the next 5 years, very likely, unless things change. I'm feeling a big divide here in Canada between the haves and the have-nots. It's part of why I'm selling all my properties off. By the way, shameless plug, we've sold half my portfolio. I have half my portfolio left. If you're interested in I have duplexes in the under 600,000 range near Western University. I have a sixplex in an amazing location, fully vacant or fully tenanted, whatever you'd prefer. Just renovated, done up really nice for 1.3 mil. It's got like a 7 cap rate, I think. I have to double check the numbers, but 7 to 7.5 cap rate, which is amazing for an A+ location in London. Hit that up privately. I'm sure that'll be sold in the next couple of weeks. Whichever one I focus on tends to get sold. But I got lots of properties that are coming up. If you like student rentals or you like just like duplexes, I got a bunch of duplexes and triplexes and stuff as well. So hit me up with that. And yeah, I'm excited to get out of the buy and hold game. I'm at a stage in my journey where I don't want to be associating with have-nots, unfortunately. And tenants tend to be the bottom of society, just economically speaking. You know, all people are equal and whatnot, but when you don't have a lot and someone like your landlord has a lot, then you want to take from them. You don't want to pay rent. You want to damage the place. There just tends to be a spirit that doesn't work. I just don't want to be part of that culture. I think that, God, my mom's got fruit right here and friggin' fruit fly. This is also, she works from home and I let my mom live with us for now. It's a long story. She needed somewhere to stay. But my office, she has like stuff here in my office. It bugs me. Pet peeve. All right, back to topic. What were we talking about? I'll go to the questions. I lost my train of thought. We are going to touch on inflation today too. We need to have a big conversation about inflation. I've touched on it a little bit, but we haven't had enough time spent diving into this because it's dangerous. I just saw a comment about inflation, and we'll talk about that in a sec. Manib says, what's up, Mike? What's up? David, hey, what's up? Life's good, can't complain. Cindy says, hey, hope you're doing well. Thanks, Cindy. So yeah, maybe it is 32,000. I'm gonna have to look into that about the, Andrew, about the dividend grossed up. Is it potentially that the corporate tax rates have fallen? Not likely. Could be the tax brackets have changed and risen in Canada, and so there'd be less of it in a tax-free manner. Irregardless, Andrew, if you were to take in, say, 60,000 a year in dividend income, it's still tax preferred. You do get a gross up tax credit on it, so it's better than earning income regularly. So you might be paying, like, your average tax rate might be now 7% or something as opposed to 0. So it's not tax-free, but it'd be, you know, damn near tax-free, which is pretty sweet. Canada is, or was, a pretty great place to early retire. It has a lot of great things going for it. You don't need health insurance, as an example. A lot of great things about Canada that, you know, we could get into and talk about, but a very socialist, you know, on the scale, I think. Andrew says, hey, Mike, I tried to miss your videos. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Campbell says, what aren't tax brackets increasing with inflation? I think you mean why. So why aren't tax brackets increasing with inflation? Great question. Because the government has printed, share this fact in your social media, share it with everyone. In the last 4 years, Trudeau has increased the debt by more than all the previous prime ministers in the last 150 years. He has increased our debt load in the last 4 years as much as his predecessors for the last 150 years. Started with his dad, brought us into the, you know, his dad brought us into the, was it his dad? Or is Fidel Castro his dad? I don't know. I've seen pictures. I've seen the similarities. I know that Trudeau's, you know, wife on a couple of trips did you know, sleep around a little bit. So it's very, very likely, given the timelines that she was there, that his dad is actually not Trudeau. But anyway, our prime minister, the drama teacher, an actor, with zero, he's actually the first prime minister we've ever had who doesn't have a law degree or a master's in economics. He has neither. He doesn't know anything about the economy and nothing about law. He's just a drama teacher. Look at how things have gone. Anyway, it's it's challenging times. On the topic of inflation, he has spent, for real, the spending is unreal. I get that we've gone through a pandemic. I get that, you know, a lot of countries are spending right now more than they have before, the US as well. But it's really bad. To answer your question, why are they not increasing the tax brackets proportional to the real inflation? Well, because they're adjusting the CPI index. They're adjusting the goods and the weightings inside of the index. They've been doing this since 1980. They continue to adjust it so that inflation doesn't seem so bad. If you calculate inflation using the same metrics they did in 1990, we have 17% inflation right now. That's scary. If you didn't get a 17% raise this year, you got a pay decrease. If your investment portfolio didn't outperform 17%, you made zero, you made negative. The reason they aren't increasing the tax brackets is it's actually really smart of governments to print money. They should print as much as they possibly can from the government's perspective, right? If you're trying to collapse the economy and not pay the debt that you owe, basically keep interest rates super low, let, you know, the inflation run rampant for a little bit. The good news is all of our assets appreciate, all of our houses appreciate, everything goes up in price. Then they can tax all those gains that they artificially created, because if you have 17% inflation, everything's up 17%. All of your assets are 17% more, and the government can take half of that now. So you actually lost, if your portfolio did 20% this year and inflation was like, say, 17%, and then you on your 20% you paid half of it in tax, you actually made a net of 10% and inflation was 17%, you lost 7%. That's exactly what the government wants. They don't want to increase the brackets if they push out a new tax legislation to increase, you know, the amount of tax people have to pay, everyone fights that. But if you just let inflation run rampant and then leave the tax brackets where they are, you effectively collect more tax revenue from everyone, and you inflate everyone's income so you can collect more tax, and you inflate everyone's assets, and the tax brackets stay the same. Guess what? And he didn't even keep the tax brackets the same. He actually increased them, especially at the top. If you're making 200,000 or more, 220,000 or more, it's like 55% tax. And if you include your other payroll taxes and things, and Canada Child Benefit clawbacks, if you're a person who's working with kids, your effective tax rate after the clawbacks is about 73%. So that's messed up in Canada. That's a real problem if you're upper middle class in Canada. It's a real tight squeeze in the upper middle class right now. It is what it is. That's why. they're not increasing because the government wants to collect more revenue to cover their spending. That just makes sense for them. Doesn't make sense for us. Like, bye Canada. We have the right to leave. We can, okay, unknown or less known fact, when you leave Canada and you file an exit return, you are deemed to have sold all of your assets. So if you do leave to a tax haven, you have to liquidate, or on paper, find the liquidation value of your entire shares in all your companies. It's assumed as if you emptied your companies and sold everything. Same with all your properties, all your shares, everything, all your publicly traded shares, etc. All of that. So when you leave, they get a huge tax payout. So they're happy about that too. But at least you don't have to pay any more tax to them. And I believe in the future, tax rates will only continue to rise, especially given, look at the deficit that we have right now. Someone has to pay for that in the future. That's going to come from somewhere, or the current fiat currency will collapse. One of the two. Either way, it's going to suck if you're in Canada, or any of the developed nations is printing themselves into, switching to a digital, cryptocurrency, which may be what happens. Ben says, 2022 will be the first year as a taxpayer not having any T-slip income. I'm thinking about expating expatting, I think you meant. Since I'm single with no assets but will have 6-figure employment income. Ben, you definitely, 100% should expat. I don't know if you call it expating from Canada, but you should definitely go to a tax haven and leave here. If you don't have a lot of assets, you have almost nothing to file on your exit return. It's super easy. You could go there 7 months a year, come back here 5 to visit family if you wanted to. You could be here May to November and be gone the rest in the cold seasons. And if you work digitally online, why would you stay here and pay 40 to 50% in tax when you could pay 0? Makes no sense to me if you're a high income earner why you'd stay in Canada, other than like family ties or emotional reasons. Like financially speaking, it's so cut and dry to leave. And yet here I am. I continue to stay in Canada. I have emotional reasons for staying, and I'm working towards exiting. We're talking about homeschooling the kids now, pulling them out of school too, just because some of the values, I don't know. We've been talking about homeschooling since the beginning. We think it'd be much better to have a nanny and a private teacher and be able to get our kids on an advanced path and route. I think that the current education system is designed for training people to work in workplaces and factories. I don't know. I'm probably pulling my kid out of school. I'm gonna have all 3 kids homeschooled, I think. We'll just hire a nanny or a private tutor, and we'll get them on an advanced, trajectory of learning where they learn things that are valuable. Like as an example, as a prerequisite to my economics degree, I had to take functions and quadratics, and I had to take calculus, and I had to take calculus and vectors. There's just so many useless courses. Like I spent probably 300 hours doing calculus and vectors, and I've never once used that, ever. Like, it's never been valuable in my life. The biggest waste of 300 hours. I can name many other courses that I've taken that were completely irrelevant. I took a sociology essay course in university as well. It was a requirement to have an essay course as part of my degree. Again, completely useless. There was a socialist, leftist teacher who just studying things that were not valuable at all. Like I learned nothing in the class. I don't know. There's lots of examples like that, but quadratics and I think calculus, for someone who's going into business, when will you ever need to calculate the hypotenuse of anything ever? Like, who cares? There's even computer programs to do all of that. Like, there's literally zero reason I would ever need that in a business degree. I don't want my kids to, unless my daughters are interested in taking, going into engineering or some field where they need to be able to calculate that. Okay. But the school system has a lot of requirements that make no sense. There's a lot of learnings that are poor and a lot of values that are poor. And the worst is the teachers have their own set of values that they then push on the students. And a lot of the teachers, they live paycheck to paycheck. They have terrible values when it comes to money. And they have terrible values sometimes when it comes to politics. And they might have terrible values when it comes to things that are important to me and my family, right? So I think homeschooling is a way forward, especially if you're an early retirement, fire person who can afford to do that. I don't know. It's too expensive not to. Next question. Hey Mike, about to land my first 6-figure job, which I'll be able to work remotely. How can I leverage my newly acquired income and ability to live just about anywhere? Well, We just explained that it's totally possible for you to leave. Unfortunately, my savings at the moment are only about 20K and I'm debt free, looking to live between Ottawa and some other much warmer secondary location. Yeah, I mean, you could easily spend 5 months a year here and go 6.5, 5.5 here and 6.5 somewhere warm like Panama or Thailand. There's a lot of Singapore, a lot of Asian countries too, where you get the zero tax thing. I have to look into it. I don't have any specifics off the top of my head. And again, Google is my friend in this situation. It can be your friend in this situation. You can do some Googling and find out pretty quickly what each place offers. But my understanding is that there are, you should follow is Nomad Capitalist on Instagram. They're fantastic. His name's Andrew, should forget his name, but at Nomad Capitalist, he talks about 10 places you can move to that have very easy entry requirements that don't require a lot of money to move there. So you can get citizenship pretty easily, especially if you go there and contribute in some way, like you're working there. Your tax rate could be much, much better. You should definitely look into that 100%. Doesn't mean you can't keep your Canadian citizenship. Doesn't mean you couldn't change your mind later. Doesn't mean you don't come back to Canada 4 or 5 months a year. You're just not a tax resident here. That's okay. You will lose your health benefits. You can probably afford insurance, in that tax haven for $300, $400, $500 a month. That's less than the tax you're paying, for sure. Yeah, you can always move back to Canada, worst case. Like, Canada's pretty forgiving. It's like, hey, come on back anytime you want. Just pay tax here. No problem, Nico. Happy to help. Eric says, hey, Mike, can you accept me into your Facebook options group? Yes. I haven't been on that group very actively lately. My bad. I do share on my Instagram stories what I've been investing in. I had a shite week. It was horrible. The market's just been beating me up. Everything I buy just trashed. Just horrible. Yeah. So I will share what I've been up to there. I've also just been busy with everything going on. A lot going on trying to sell these properties, get them all fixed up, and then my own house. I've been doing a lot of renovations and stuff. So Jawad says, what's up, Mike? How's your leverage dividend investing going? My plan is to retire on that strategy in the near future. So that portfolio is actually up a lot. I'm beating the S&P 500, I believe, and I'm definitely beating the TSX. I have to check the exact performance, but I'm crushing the TSX. Most of my stuff is Canadian eligible dividends, so TSX is my benchmark. TSX hasn't performed near as well as the S&P 500. Unfortunately, tech has been outperforming. Dividend stocks tend to be more stable stuff like utility plays and financial sector and that sort of thing. So it doesn't tend to have as much aggressive growth, but very stable. You can lever up. Like I said, I do 2 to 1. So if my yield on my portfolio is 5%, I'm doing 10% in dividend income plus appreciation, and the cost of debt's like 2% or something. So yeah, that portfolio is doing very well. Very pleased with how that's been going. Yeah. So true regarding, yes, 100%. It doesn't really help with transmission. It helps with severity. Pfizer convicted 74 times since 2000. Someone just shared in the comments. I mean, there's just a history of egregious violations from all of the big pharma and tons of corruption with lobbying, politics, and government and whatnot. Mexico is the most free and open place currently. Interesting. I didn't know that about Mexico. I've heard good things. It's pretty close as well. David Lee says, question, Mike, where can I find more information about using the tax-free savings account as a secondary mortgage lending? So David, look into private mortgage lending using registered vehicles. A good example, there's like about 50 places you can use that will provide that third-party lending arm. One of them is Olympia Trust. You can look them up. There's a bunch of other ones that you can look up as well, but you have to go through one of those third-party arms. So you'd basically transfer your TFSA to Olympia Trust. Once that was set up, then you'd find someone who was wanting to borrow, and you'd go through Olympia Trust, and they would set it up for you. Thanks for your time, Mike. Cheers from Burlington. Hey, no problem. Hey, Leventhal. Longhorn says, hi, Mike. Have you considered Dubai as a location to move to for tax purposes? No, I haven't. Culturally, I think it wasn't so great for women there in Dubai, and I'm married and have 3 daughters, so that was a little piece of it. I hear it's hard also to immigrate to Dubai, so that I hadn't looked into it, but I had heard through the grapevine that it wasn't a top choice. Have you ever looked into E2 visas for the USA? I haven't looked into that at all, to be honest. You probably know more about that than me, but a quick Google search I can become enlightened pretty quick. So can you. Daniel says, thanks for the free info. Quick question. What do you do when an appraisal comes in way too low? Do you get it redone right away and hope for the best, or wait a bit for the market to appreciate to be safe? Daniel, my thought is, God dang it, my mom has these seeds she's drying out, she wants to plant in the spring, and they're freaking fruit flies beside them. My mom's a hoarder, and it bothers me. Both my mom and my dad I'm currently supporting, and it's not without its challenges. Not without its challenges. Sorry, so if you do see the odd fruit fly by, it's because right below the camera here, there are some nasty seeds drying out. Back to your question about low appraisals. I have had a ton of low appraisals in my time. I've had a ton of appraisals that have gone well too. By and large, appraisals come in about 10% under market value. That's just a rule. I've talked about that a million times on the channel. I did a video a long time ago that you can go watch called How to Get a Rockstar Appraisal. One of my first ever oldest videos. I think it's the third video I ever released. It's like 4 or 5 years ago. It's a great one that talks about what you can do to get a better appraisal. But suffice it to say, I've ordered 3 appraisals before. I was trying to get financing and I wasn't sure which lender would come through, so each of the lenders appointed an appraisal. And this was on a property that's worth about $500,000, and the appraisals came back $390, $550, and like $420. These are all bank-approved appraisers, and there was that much variation. The property's worth, again, about $500,000. Mostly, they come in low. So expect that appraisals will come in low. Sometimes they'll come in higher, but that's not in the appraiser's best interest. The appraiser has insurance to protect themselves, but they're hired by the bank, not by you. The bank hires them. And if they make a mistake and they overvalue or come at market on your property instead of under market, and the bank has to then at any point foreclose on the property, they will go back to the appraiser and say, hey, this property appraised at 400. Why is it only selling for 350? You messed up. You cover the difference. We're suing you. So the appraiser's best interest is always to go low. It sucks. It just is what it is. I can't tell you how many times I had a property appraised and I sold it a month later and it sold for way more than appraisal. Appraisals come in low. I reappraised my house here, came in low. Hear horror stories from tons of people everywhere. It's always low. That's just how appraisers are. It's in their best interest to be low. Sometimes, if you do all the right things, you can get market value. Sometimes, if you get really lucky, you get a little bit more than market value. But it's more of an art than a science, to be honest. It's very hard to make all of the proper adjustments. With the amount of money they're given and the time they're given, it's hard for an appraiser to do an accurate job. Properties are so hard to appraise. Each one is so different. It's hard to get them apples to apples and to make all the adjustments needed between the comparables to get a property's exact value. Because on the open market, someone could like the fact that it's separately metered, but like a separately metered duplex doesn't add any real value. It doesn't add any value at all to rent roll, to NOI. It doesn't really matter. But for some reason, some investors are like, oh, this is a purpose-built duplex. It's separately metered. Like, oh, it must be somehow better. And they'll pay like 20% more. The same duplex in every way, but one's separately metered, one isn't. To separately meter is like $5,000. Not that much money. But it can sometimes justify 20, 30, 40, 50,000 more. Sometimes it justifies nothing more. So there's just so many little nuances like that that go into how you market the property and depending on the buyer. It's tough. I'm gonna go up here and catch up where I was at. Quick question, what do you get when an appraisal comes in? We did that question. So the next one is you need to monetize the channel so the algorithm will push it to a broader audience. Eric, I admittedly have not been putting in any time to monetizing the channel. The channel is demonetized right now. All of these videos, if I monetize them, they'll ban them because I talk about, VAX. I talk about, VID19. I talk about, the political climate. I talk about, tax, whatever. And I also just speak my mind freely without a filter. And that is not very monetizable. But yes, I could. For sure, I could monetize again. And it would get out to a broader audience for sure. I make zero from any of the live streams because I have them demonetized. I could start putting one ad in or something, and maybe that would in some way get them to push it out to a broader audience. I know the super chats are a way that they value the stream. They'll push it out to my audience. But some of the super chats, they tend to make a little bit of money. They take 30%, I think, 35%, something like that. And I know that they do then push it out to a broader audience so they can make more money. There is something there like, hey, if people are super chatting, this must be This must be a stream worth pushing out to the audience. Next question. Someone said homeschool is the only way forward. Yes. Crypto with a K says, did you see what communist Western University did to that student? Yes. Interestingly, so I used to be a guest lecturer. I used to come in for a case at Ivy called the Roseharts, and it's a case I did a bunch of years ago that I wrote for a wealth management class. And I won't be coming back to the university to do that class ever. I don't support the university at all. They are very, very leftist. They always have been, but more so now than ever before. So the context of this is you now have to be fully vaccinated to attend Western University. And there were students who paid their tuition. One of the students was, as an example that this article was about, who were put on probation, like not probation, but suspended. They can't see their grades online. They can't log in. Why can't you log in to a portal online because you're not vaccinated? What? What? It's Canada's largest university, and you can't log in online without being vaccinated. So at a protest, he's like, hey, I've paid my tuition. I'm in my 4th year. I think he was an upper year student. He was 22, so he's maybe in his 5th year, and went onto campus and protested and went to class and said, hey, fellow classmates, do you think this is okay? The data doesn't suggest that I'm any more of a risk to you guys than anyone else here who's vaccinated. There's no science to support that. I should have a right, given I paid tuition, to either have a refund, but I don't even want a refund. I think what he wanted in this case was to be able to finish his university degree. And they called the police and dragged him out of class. He did it again. They dragged him out, and then they expelled him. So they took his money for all those years, and he gets nothing out of it. That is messed up. I'm sorry. I do not stand by Western, or as an alum, I feel horrible that they're not even following the science. There is no data to suggest that being vaccinated reduces transmission. It's minuscule. And the average age on campus is 19. No one on campus is at risk. I wish that we would trust the science. We don't stop people from eating on campus because they might choke and die. There are more people that died of choking last year in the age brackets of 0 to 30 than there are people dying of COVID. So it's not a risk of dying from COVID. Choking is a real risk. So what? No one can eat? Car accidents are a real risk. So what? No one can drive? What do we lock everyone in a frickin' box? It makes no sense. It makes me so angry that they're making such bad policy decisions. I want everyone who wants to be vaccinated to get vaccinated and keep getting vaccinated every 6 months or whatever if they want to for the rest of their life. Cool. There might be negative ramifications. There probably isn't. In a very small percentage of situations, there are going to be myocarditis and other little issues. Whatever. COVID comes with issues too. I mean, it sucks. It's a crappy, bad flu year, unfortunately. I like masks. I've always liked masks. I've respected the fact that Korea and in China, it's very common. If you're sick, you put a mask on. If you're on a bus, you put a mask on. I wish we'd have a mask mandate in general. I just think it's a hygienic way for us to share common indoor spaces. Outside, it makes no sense at all to have a mask on at all. If you're exercising, again, it makes no sense at all. A better way is to bring in HRV systems that recycle fresh air into a building really fast. If you have 20,000 CFM fans bringing in outside air inside and warming it up as it comes in with a nice HVAC system, you would eliminate the risk entirely. Instead, we're going to spend billions on mandates when we could just spend $1 billion on retrofitting all of these public buildings so that they could then bring in more fresh air and the air to circulate faster. The science will support that, and have COVID treatment centers instead of in the hospital so you could go get a medical treatment and not die of cancer on a wait list. There's a lot of things they could be doing a lot better, and it's upsetting because we have the power to be better and to do better, and we're not. There's just the lazy option is just a mandate. Do no renovations, don't retrofit buildings, don't set up stations for people with COVID. No, just mix it all in the hospital, whatever. Put in protocols, call it a day. Even if the science doesn't suggest that it really protects anyone from anything. The flu is deadly. The flu in 2017, 2018 killed tens of thousands of people. It's a real risk, but we didn't do anything then. No one even got their flu shot. Like
30% of Canadians got their flu shot. Like, no one cared. People don't care about choking. It's a real risk. It's just everyone's hyper-focused on this issue. It's become political. It's become, about money. And it's sad. It really is sad. I don't know. I think that on principle alone, they shouldn't have a right to expel a student over not being vaccinated. I guess the student could get vaccinated if that's their choice. You can't force. You can't say, hey, you have free choice to do whatever you want, but guess what? You have no rights, and we're going to coerce you into getting this. So then it's not free choice, right? It should be a choice for every person. I'm sorry. I stand by that. I stand by that. As an immigrant tech worker, I decided to move to the US, Cali at first, as the HQ is there. I already have a work permit. I'm just too annoyed about the lack of market for talent in tech. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, you could work virtually, I think, and then once you have that job, you could really go wherever you wanted. Longhorn says, I can assure you culturally, Dubai is the most accepting and welcoming country for women. You might be mistaken it for how it is in Saudi Arabia. Dubai loves Westerners. And post-pandemic, they have opened up numerous visa categories to welcome in more and more foreigners. Dubai has virtually no oil, unlike Abu Dhabi, and hence they want entrepreneurs and foreign investors. Interesting. I hadn't done a ton of research. I read one article that said that, I don't know. So I didn't really look into it a ton. I read like one article and talked to someone who was from Dubai, and they kind of just shared their perspective. I heard it was harder to get there, and the tax situation wasn't as good as some of the other tax havens that existed. So maybe there's something there. I don't know. Could look into it. What about insurance claim? I don't make insurance claims. It hasn't been a big focus for me. Are insurance claims tax-free? On the subject of tax-free, I don't know. I think insurance payouts are tax-free. Interestingly, I think that's true. Same with workplace injuries. I think that's also tax-free. So there are some awesome things in Canada you could do. You can win the lottery too. Lottery winnings are also tax-free. Would that affect the insurance claim for legal duplex versus non-legal duplex? Legal basement can result in denial of insurance claim. I don't know. It's a good question. I have properties that are nanny suites or quasi-legal. That's just very common. Like half the properties in London are not properly retrofitted because they're old buildings. So there might be some sort of reason why they wouldn't comply. And in many cases, if they don't comply, you just go to the city and you apply for a minor variance, and then you're good. Less than 6'5" headroom, you can apply for a minor variance because it's an old building. You get approved, you can keep running it, get a rental license. So there's lots of reasons why you can do that. I've never made an insurance claim ever in my investing journey with 50 properties. I've had basements flood, I've had roofs rip off, I've had a foundation collapse. Still never made an insurance claim ever, and never officially sued anyone. So that's just me. That's just how I am. Not to say that I won't ever, but I am very much against. I don't even like insurance, to be honest. I prefer to self-insure unless it's a major issue, like $1 million issue. That's just me. It's just the type of person I am. Yeah. Thanks for sharing your wisdom with us. Juan says, hey Mike, is now a good time to sell puts? Looking like the market is suffering. Juan from Sarnia. Yeah, I mean, it could be. We're up quite a bit on year to date, but there are certain stocks right now, like I like PayPal. I like Alibaba right now. I like Sammy Adams, Boston Brewing. I like some of the gaming companies like Activision, Blizzard. I like, there's some dividend plays right now I think that have been beaten up a little bit. A few names in there that can make sense right now. I have to go through my whole portfolio, but like I have like 80 names right now that I'm in. I cannot predict the future though. Like who knows what can happen in the future. And my Tesla short was doing pretty well. I'm going to close that out shortly here, the next big down day that I get. I'm still bullish on crypto too, as well. I think there's some value there. They've been beat up a little bit as of recently. So by crypto plays, I mean there's like, Mara, Riot, Coinbase, MicroStrategy. Good evening, Mike. Nice to see the beard shaving off. Thanks, Will. Yeah, I mean, it's, I actually am not shaving again because I dipped under my portfolio value, so I haven't shaved in the last like 5 days or so. So it's going to start coming back soon. Unless I get this portfolio to come back. I'm holding the line. David says, Western University student, this is how villains are made. Yeah, right? Patel says, can you please make a video upon the student rental properties? I'm looking to buy property in Peterborough. How are your thoughts on it? Again, I don't know a ton about Peterborough, but most student rentals are the same. With student rentals, what you'll find is you have a slightly higher cash flow because you're renting to students. They typically pay a price per bedroom. You can make them sign one group lease, but you're gonna get a little bit more. Also, your utilities will be more. Your wear and tear on the property will be more. There'll definitely be higher instances of neighbor complaints and what's the word I'm looking for? Headaches and hassle. They're gonna bug you more because they're not used to living on their own. So their first time living on their own, they're gonna have a lot more issues adjusting. So that might mean a cleanliness issue. That might mean leaving garbage out and the neighbors are calling you because they didn't put the garbage out at the right time and it got torn open by animals in the front yard. That kind of stuff happens. And when the students move out, they'll leave like 10 couches in the front yard and beds and stuff. That's just part of the game. But you do get higher cash flow. So student rentals are awesome because one, you don't have long-term tenants. They change out after a couple of years so you can keep up with market rents. You don't ever get legacy tenants. You don't have to do a landlord-tenant board almost ever. I've never been to the landlord-tenant board for students. Students they don't have time to be going to the landlord-tenant board. You gotta be a loser. If you have time to go to the landlord-tenant board and fight with your landlord, you're a loser. Straight up, you don't value your time at all. So the only tenants going to the landlord-tenant board are losers who don't value their time. So if you want to rent to the loser community, you got to buy C-class rentals ideally. The cheaper the rental, the more likely. The worse the area, the more likely. The better the area, the wealthier the tenant, the less the chance of any drama and issues, but the lower the cash flow. Those properties that are really nice, that have great tenants in them, they sell at really low cap rates. Cap rate meaning income to price. So you don't make a great return because they're so easy. But you can make a great return, but you have a lot of headaches on the C-class properties and the student rentals and stuff. And that said, there are really high quality student rentals too. I had a student rental once that I rented for $700 a bedroom. They're $725 a bedroom. And I had quality students in there. And the parents guaranteed the lease. They were like engineering students and doctors and really good quality students that didn't have any issues. They kept the place mint. When they moved out, it actually looked nicer. They painted the baseboards. Their parents hired someone to clean the house and paint it because they felt bad. They were just good quality class people. Losers don't have any money and they have drama and issues, and those people can't afford to, when they move out, they like bang the wall like, oh well, and they move on. They don't do anything. They don't spend the money to rehabilitate the property. So that's just the difference in real estate depending on the class of tenant and the class of real estate you're working with. I gotta wrap this up. I gotta do bedtime. Not saying it's right, but just the Ontario case count each day should be science enough to say that unvaxxed are getting affected by COVID, 15% unvaxxed, but account for 50% of daily cases. But cases don't really matter. I mean, if you have it or not, it doesn't matter. There are lots of people I know who are coming in contact with people who have COVID and are vaccinated and they test negative. They're carrying it around. I know someone who kissed someone who's unvaccinated, who had COVID, and they're vaccinated, and they took the test, and they have enough viral load to test positive. They had COVID in their system, guaranteed, and they were spreading it around. Everywhere they went, everyone they talked to. And that's dangerous. It's actually more dangerous if you're vaccinated because you're going around carrying this huge viral load, testing negative, but spreading it around to people. If you're unvaccinated and you're under 30, it's not a risk. COVID is not that bad. I know a lot of people who have had COVID twice now. I know people who are in their 20s who've had it twice. Guess what? The research is showing that people can test positive for natural antibodies for over a year after having it. And if you've had exposure to COVID, I talked to an expert in the field. I'm not gonna name the name, but I've talked to an expert in the field. Actually, I've talked to 3 experts in the field. One of them's a nurse, and the other 2 are doctors. And one of the doctors was telling me, 2 of the doctors were actually telling me in both cases, there was very low, in one case, there was no one who is admitted to the ER, unvaccinated or vaccinated, who's had COVID before. None. So if you had it before, you're safe, you're good. And you'd think by now, because it's so contagious, that everyone unvaccinated has probably been exposed to it. They're getting pretty close, right? So you got a bunch of people who have natural immunity, and that's okay. Natural immunity is better than vaccinated immunity. So we should be doing antibody tests to see if you have a natural resistance. If you do, if you built that up, hey, you don't need this vaccine mandate. Who cares? You're safer. And if you're vaccinated and you're walking around and you're spreading it, guess what? That's still dangerous. You're spreading it at an even more dangerous rate because if you're unvaccinated, you'll stay home if you've got it in your system. If you're vaccinated, you'll feel okay enough to go out into the world and spread it around. It's dangerous. We're going to see as the research comes out that there's mixed stuff on this. And I think that, one, people are overreacting. In general, I think it's not that bad. We have now, a lot of pharmaceutical companies are coming out with a version of ivermectin at an 800% cost that basically is a protease inhibitor. It's the exact same thing. They're gonna sell it for like $500 a bottle of pills, I'm sure, $1,000 a pill versus 5 cents. But we have ways to treat this, and we're gonna find ways to treat this. And if you're healthy and you take zinc and vitamin D and do some of the things that you need to be doing, Joe Rogan as an example, fought it and was just fine. Like there's a bunch of people I know who've got it and been just fine. If you're old and you're gonna die from a breeze blowing by, it's probably gonna kill you. But so would the flu. So would anything. Like, if you look at the average age of death, it's close to the average age of death in general in Canada. The average age of death from COVID is the same as the average age of death, period. It's like 78 or something last night. It fluctuates, but in the ages of 70s, or young 80s at one point. It was 82 for a bit, it was 76 for a bit. But the point is, it's, yeah, anyway. It's very divisive, but the data suggests that even if you're vaccinated, you're dangerous and potentially more dangerous. You might be more protected yourself. If you've had it before, you're the most protected. If you're vaccinated, you're next most protected. If you haven't had it, or had the vaccine, you're at most risk. But if you're 20 years old, you're and you're unvaccinated and you never had it, you're at a lower risk of complication than someone who's 40 and vaccinated. That's just the science. If you're in your 40s or 50s and you're vaccinated, you're as safe as someone who's unvaccinated at 20. If you're old and you're vaccinated, you still have a chance of dying. That's a fact, right? Like, anyway, most people who are vaccinated, they get the flu and they don't get tested because they're like, oh, I've already been vaccinated, I'm good. It's just, and they go around, they spread it. And that's part of why the case count is probably lower. And you're right. Default End comes in here and says, choking is not a communicable disease, bad comparison. Sure, but it's a risk. So you're taking a risk with your own life. When you get in a car, you could kill someone, you could hit someone. That's one where it's communicable. You could then affect someone else with that decision, right? You smoke a cigarette, secondhand smoke's deadly. Again, terrible, but like we're not crucifying people who are smoking. The problem is, if you're vaccinated, you're still communicable. It's not that you're not anymore. You're at the same transmission amount. Like it's probably more dangerous actually, because you can carry around a higher viral load, show no symptoms, and spread it around. You could kill someone. And an 80-year-old vaccinated person, if your professor is 75, tenured professor, and they're double vaccinated, guess what? They're at a higher risk than that 22-year-old student who came in there unvaccinated. So the science makes no fucking sense. The professor shouldn't be allowed in that classroom with all those vaccinated people. It's dangerous for them. But again, I think it's their choice. So they should be allowed to do whatever they want. I think this professor should be able to consent to walk in there and, based on the numbers and the science, take a risk with their own life. It's their free will. They can choose to expose themselves to the flu or not. They can choose to get in a car or not. It's not Big Brother's decision whether we get locked in or not. The data doesn't suggest that a young individual is at risk. That's a fact. So if they chose to not vaccinate, I respect that choice. Even if I'm vaccinated, I still respect their choice to not vaccinate because the science suggests they're not that much at risk and they're not really transferring it to anyone. There's no benefit to me if they're vaccinated or not. So why are we forcing it? Even if there was a benefit to me, I'm not going to be selfish and force these chemicals into their body if they don't want it. It's their medical decision. I'm not going to be such a pious, selfish asshole like Trudeau. I'm sorry. I'm getting heated here, but it pisses me off. Okay, I'm done this stream for now. I'm going to do one more question. We'll pick this one. Do you think dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin and Ethereum at 16 years old did not sell for the next 2 years, selling for down payment and then investing at 19 is a good plan? I mean, if you can buy on a dip, buy Ethereum on a dip right now, yeah, I think Ethereum's gonna be 10,000 a token. That said, in the next 2 years, it could also be 3,000 a token. So it depends on your time horizon. If you're like, hey, I'll get a house whenever crypto moons next on the next upcycle, cool. But if you're like, I need a house at 19 no matter what, it might be unlucky that when you need that money for that down payment, crypto might be in a down cycle and Ethereum might be at a lower point than it was when you invested in it, potentially. And so there is that risk associated with, buying. But I think, yeah, just adjust your time horizon. say, hey, I'm going to buy a house next time crypto moons. Put all your money into Bitcoin and Ethereum. Sure, you're 16, you can't buy stocks. You can't invest in public markets till you're over 18. So you can invest in crypto. It's just a currency, and you can get exposure to that appreciation. I think if you're 16 years old right now, you should be loaded up on Ethereum and Bitcoin and Ultra Token and a lot of other ADA and Solana and there's a whole bunch of other great alt tokens you could spread your money out into. And I think in a 5-year period from now, on the next up cycle, you're gonna be really thankful and have a 5x or a 10-bagger return. So yes, I'm pro crypto. I believe the fiat currency will crumble to its knees, and the fiat, when it's no longer valuable, will make the digital cryptocurrencies that have good use cases very valuable. If you went back in time, what investing strategy would you use? Real estate for sure. Again, I would do real estate. If I had the wisdom of foresight, I would obviously do crypto because I could lever better and it appreciated way better than real estate with none of the headaches. But without knowing what I know now, real estate is a safer way to build wealth. It's very hard to lose money. Crypto, you can lose money. But in real estate, it's very hard to lose money. Your base is pretty solid. And you can lever up 4 or 5 times to 1 and make great returns. Even if you made an 8% return, if you're levered 4 to 1, that's a 30% return almost, right? So it's very easy to get double-digit returns in real estate, guaranteed. So for the risk to reward, real estate with leverage outperforms 100%. I gotta wrap the stream up though. It's my kid's bedtime. Christian, I'd probably spread that 350K out in a few different places. Maybe a third into crypto, a third into stocks, maybe a third into lending or something. Roll into another property maybe. Lots of options. Should I pay tax if I buy a home with crypto capital gain? Yes, Harpreet. If you sell your crypto, there's a capital gains tax with selling the crypto. Same as if you sell your stocks or your house or anything you sell. Unless it's your primary residence, in which case it'd be tax-free because you get the primary residence tax-free exemption. Okay, cool. Thanks everyone so much. Oh, I missed one. Logan says, hey Mike, what's the best way to protect yourself against inflation that's relatively liquid? I think there are lots of ways to protect yourself against inflation. One of the ways that is pretty great is by investing in equities, real estate, things that will float with the tides. I like public companies that can pass on inflation. So Facebook can increase their ad revenue, like no problem. The grocery store can increase their food cost. You can keep buying it. Gasoline, we still need to buy gas. So that price in oil would transfer over as an example with inflation. Commodities too, like if price of copper goes up, like Lowe's, you still buy renovation materials. Even though they're double the price, we're still buying them. So businesses that can pass on inflation, it's a great way to protect yourself while staying liquid. It's tough. Crypto is very liquid. Publicly traded companies are very liquid. So those are two options that are like great for liquidity. There's lots of other things you can put your money in, like gold and silver and stuff that helps hedge, but I'm not a big fan of gold and silver. I find it hard to liquidate quickly. You have to, especially physical. And I think crypto will outperform gold and silver. It's just a better version. That's all the questions. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching. Sorry I got on a rant there, but I don't see the science supporting some of the decisions, and I think that people are being very selfish, and that doesn't feel very Canadian. We are accepting of people no matter where they come from. If someone has mental illness, we don't say you can't work for me because you might stab me because you're crazy. Or if, someone has AIDS, you're like, hey, you can't go to Western University because you have AIDS. Like, what if you got blood and it got someone else AIDS? Like, it feels like the 80s when AIDS was like a pandemic. You didn't let people do things who had AIDS. You're like, oh my God, they have leprosy. That's what this feels like. And it's a fucking flu. It's a bad flu, but it's a flu. And it's not killing or hurting severely very many people that are young. Yes, this stream will be uploaded later for replay. All of my streams are uploaded later for playback. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. We'll see you next week. Remember, you can always follow me along on Instagram at Mike Rosehart. I do 10 posts a day on my Instagram stories. You can follow me there, or on Facebook. I'm now blue checkmark verified on Facebook, so you'll know where to find me with the little blue checkmark beside my name. I have an options group you can join too, a stock options trading group. I'll try to go on there and approve people. Sorry if I didn't do that. I need to appoint some people to be administrators so that they can approve people. That would be smart of me to do. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. We will see you next week. Remember, the secret to unlocking a wealthier you is 3 levers fully in your control. You control your financial destiny. Spend less, earn more, and maximize returns in the difference. That's the simple formula. If you follow it, you'll be wealthy. That's it. Bye, everyone.